Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris, and in today's video I have got some easy, budget-friendly, beautiful winter decor items. So let's begin. Alright, so this project, I have got this, I'm going to call it a wood finial. Some people might call it a spindle. I don't know. When I think of spindle, I think of the long section, but it's a salvage piece of wood. And tell me if I am not mistaken, but when you look at this, do you not see a snowman's head? Because that's exactly what I saw. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the top section that I believe to be his hat in this color black. You can use any brand paint that you want. I like to share with everybody what I use just in case you're interested. And I do put a lot of the stuff in my description box, so you can always revert down into the description box to see what products I'm using. But this is the Heirloom Traditions in the color Iron Gate. It is an all-in-one paint. And I do end up applying about 2 coats. All right, once I've got that put on, I'm going to grab my white paint. This is the Casement color by Fusion. It is also an all-in-one paint, and I am going to apply 2 coats of this to the rest of our spindle piece here. All right, so next we're going to need some of these little fasteners, a number 0 wood biscuit, and 2 15mm half beads. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this wood biscuit, and I'm going to trim it in half, and then I'm going to kind of shape it. And I'm just using my miter shears. If you have something easier to shape it, then, you know, you do you. But this is about the sharpest thing I've got that's going to cut through this. And so I'm just kind of trimming it, and I'm trying to make it look like a little carrot, because you know our snowman needs a little carrot nose. And then once I get the shape pretty much cut out, I'm just going to grab my sander and smooth it out around the edges, just kind of rounding it out. Now it's time to grab these fasteners. I picked these up at Walmart, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and paint them. And I'm just going to stick those little prongs into some styrofoam. This is just going to make painting them so much easier. And I start out with, I don't know, however many's here. I did only use 5 of them. So just FYI. And I'm just going to paint those with my Iron Gate. I painted the nose with Pumpkin by Waverly. Now it's time to go ahead and trim the little prongs off of the fastener. And I tried a couple different ways. I tried to spread them apart and see if trimming them one by one made any difference. I don't know. To me, it just trim it all off in one swoop. And then whatever is remaining there, I just laid on a flat, hard surface and pushed down. That way, any of that prong that's still on there is pushed inward, and when I adhere these little pieces onto our spindle, it'll be nice and flat. And as you can see, I laid the little face out just to get an idea, you know, how I want it to look. And then I do a test fit, make sure everything looks good. I will be using Tight Bond Quick and Thick. Now this stuff works wonderful. I do like to apply this onto my surface, smooth it out with my fingers, because you don't want a big gob of glue on there. For one, it'll squish out from around the edges. Then you got to clean all that up. And it does take a little bit longer to dry if you have too much glue. And we'll get his nose down. I did have to kind of hold his nose down just a little bit longer. All right, so I've got this little votive candle holder. I can't remember what this is exactly called, but anyway, I've had this in my stash. I picked it up from the Dollar Tree because I just love that wood look. And then I've got some of these bottle brush trees. I got a box of bottle brush trees that come in multiple sizes. I got mine from Amazon. This is actually my second purchase of these trees. They're really good quality. I like them that much to buy them twice, so I will be sure to link these in my description box. We're just going to make just a little tree, like a little foresty piece inside the bottom of this tea light holder. That's the word I'm looking for. I just use a little bit of hot glue just to keep these trees in place. All right, now I've got some polyfill, and you guys are going to laugh when you hear where this came out, but if you watched my video where I had bought some things from Walmart and just kind of made them over, well, this was that polyfill that came out of that Santa's hat. It was still sitting on my craft table, and I was like, waste not, want not. So that's what I used to make it look like it's got some snowy ground. And I just shoved it in there. No glue needed. So once that nose is dried, I'm going to go ahead and put these fasteners on for his mouth. And because these fasteners are metal, I decided I was not going to use the Tite Bond, but instead I'm going to use my Star Bond CA glue. And this is in the medium thickness, and I'm just going to use that. They'll be permanent. I know that this will adhere that metal to the wood piece, no problem. And it doesn't take much of this glue, just a little dab, hold it until it sets up, and then move along. And I just am using the back side of my little picker tool, you know, the little picker tool you can pick up at the Dollar Tree. I love this thing. This thing is so versatile, but I'm just using the back of it to push those fasteners down and hold it there while that glue sets up, because I have been known to super glue my fingers to everything. So I'm trying to avoid that. And would you look at that little face? Oh my God, it's so cute. All right, so I have got this scarf. It's been in my stash for many years. I'd gotten it from the Dollar Tree, and well, it's time to use this baby up, because you guys know, at least I feel, that every snowman needs a scarf. And of course, my husband's going to be like, oh, why does he need a scarf? He's made out of snow. Snow's cold. Is that really going to help? But yes, it is. Okay. In the magical world of Christmas, yes, the scarf is going to help keep Frosty warm. So first thing I do is I just cut that scarf in half. Then I am going to cut right down the long way, 2-inch thick strip. And I'm just going to wrap that around his neck, and I'm going to use some hot glue and tack each side in place. So I'll just tack it right there, let that dry. And I'm just going to pull the other end right on top of where I glued and apply some more hot glue there. And I just like the way that this hung down better as opposed to tying it. All right, so now I'm going to grab the base, and I'm just going to place the top half on the base. That way I can see how long this scarf needs to be, and I'm just going to trim it off. All right, I've got some of these little snowflakes. They've been in my stash. There are also some fasteners. I picked these up from Hobby Lobby a couple years ago, but I'm just going to trim off the little prongs on these fasteners, and I'm going to put that little snowflake right there where I crossed the scarf. Just going to apply some hot glue and let it set up, and I just think that gave it something a little extra, and that's kind of what it's going to look like there. Got a few more things I got to add though. Now I definitely know I want a little battery operated tea light candle to go on top. But I thought, well, you know, I don't want this all white to be on the top. You know, I want to make it look a little bit more matching with the scarf. So on the very top half, I'm going to use this color Midnight Blue. This is from Paint Couture. It's an all-in-one paint. And I am going to apply probably about 3 to 4 coats of this on there. What I probably should have done first was maybe apply some Mod Podge to help that paint stick down a little bit better. But if you've got the patience, put light coats on, make sure you dry it down, and it'll all work out fine. But this is what we've got after probably 3 coats. Next, I'm going to grab just another piece of that scarf that we had cut off, and I want to go ahead and wrap this piece around the side. I'm going to use some fabric Mod Podge because I have it on hand. You could most definitely use regular Mod Podge, or you can probably just use some hot glue. The only thing I warn you about is hot glue and plastic don't work the greatest, and it could also leave, leave your fabric a little bumpy. So, but I'm just going to apply a nice, smooth, generous layer, and then I'm going to do this in sections. And once I get that glue on, I'll pull that fabric over, just kind of pressing it down until I get to the end, and set it aside to completely dry. Once it's dried, we can go ahead and finish cutting off that end. And then I'm just going to go around the edges and trim off any of the excess from hanging over. And then I did have to end up just adding, I added a little bit of hot glue right at the ends. I figured, what the heck, we'll just make it the back of his little beanie. on the top of his hat. That's just my thought behind this candle. I thought if we put it on the top of his hat, it's going to be like a little, you know, the little ball on the end of a ski cap or a beanie that has a little ball on it. But anyway, looking at his face, I thought the black eyes were just too, you know, dull. So I wanted to brighten them up a little bit. I just used some white paint and just put some little dots with my stylist here. And then I'm also going to grab a very light pink colored paint. I'm just going to dab a little bit on my finger and just give him some rosy cheeks. And the one thing I forgot to mention is if you wanted to adhere the two pieces, the base and his head together, then use something heavy like E6000 or Gorilla Glue to do that with. I just decided I was going to leave mine separate, but you can adhere those down if you'd like. And you will see the end result at the end of the video in the finale. So let's go ahead and move on to project number 2. All right, so I've got this little candle holder, also from the Dollar Tree, has also been in my stash for a while, and I had it sitting aside, I think when I was doing another video, because I was looking, for that Walmart video, I was looking for something to put this tree on, and when I sat it down upside down, and I was like, oh my God, this looks like a freaking snowman hat. So that's what we're going to make. We are going to turn this into a snowman hat. So I'm just going to grab my black color paint once again and paint this. Now feel free to spray paint it. It's just a little too cold here where I live to be spray painting it. But of course, something I maybe don't mention all the time is I do prep my projects by always cleaning them. If it's got sticker residue, I will get those off. My go-to is using heat, and then anything extra, I use Goo Gone. And then I will spray some alcohol and wipe it clean to make sure I get all that goo gone. And then I also use a cleaner that I just picked up from the Dollar Tree to clean my projects. And then sometimes I'll have to clean them at the sink. Just depends on what it is and how dirty it is, but always prep your projects. The paint will adhere so much better. And I do end up applying 2 coats of this. I apply it using this little sponge dauber because I don't want a lot of streaks, so this was what I decided to use to prevent that. I've got a strip of this fabric. I was making some of my shaggy bows, and I had a strip of this left, and then I've also just got a strip of some burlap ribbon. Apparently I don't throw anything away because you never know when you're going to need it. But I'm going to take that burlap strip and I'm just going to fold it in thirds. So I'm just going to take one end, meet it up in the middle, and then the opposite end and meet that right in the middle as well. I will just use some hot glue. And just like so, just meeting them in the middle together. All right, then I'm going to flip it on over. I'm going to take that strip of, this is a blue and white buffalo check type of fabric, and I'm just going to trim off a little bit of the crazy flyaways since I don't really need that, since this is not going to be one of my shaggy bows. But I'm just going to adhere that right down the center. And I am going to grab that little candle holder and wrap this around the base of it just to see how much I need to trim off, which is quite a bit. Okay, so because I don't know if I'm going to end up selling this or keeping it for myself, I'm going to go ahead and use the Star Bond CA glue to adhere this down with. Okay, something else we can always do. I've got some of these rusty, crusty stars. I'll link those in the description box, but they also come with bells. I can always put that right there. Should give it a very rustic look. I do like that, but I don't know if I want that there, but that's an option. You can put some bells there. But I'm pretty sure I got this from probably the Dollar Tree at some point in time. Just a little battery operated candle. Okay, and then I've got one of these little candlestick rings. And I just got these from my friend Tracy at Charming Appeal on Whatnot. And I'm going to have her link in the description box. She does a lot of crafting sales and she is a wonderful creator. She's got a YouTube channel, but she hasn't done much with it. I'll also link that in the description box. Maybe we could help get her a jump start on getting some viewers. But I thought what I would do is just take this candle, just kind of rest it in there, and it fits really well. Just kind of fluff these up a little bit and then rest it on that hat like so. Isn't that adorable? Oh, and it's the easiest little snowman hat for the winter. You can start by putting it up for Christmas. I love it. You guys, I'll see more in the finale. Let's move on to project number 3. Okay, so I've got this little 5x7 picture frame. I have thrifted this and I'm just going to go ahead and prep it, start pulling out all the insides. The glass we're not going to be using, so I'll just set that away. I'm going to clean it up. And while the blue is a very nice color and all for winter, I want this to be more of a wood appearance. I just want to have a little bit more of a rustic style. So once that is prepped for paint, I'm going to grab the color Vintage Linen from DIY, and I am going to paint this frame front, back, everywhere that I can see blue. I am going to cover it up. I do end up putting 2 coats of this paint all around this frame. And once that's done, I'll set it aside. I'm going to grab this piece right here, and I'm going to grab the color Casement from Fusion and paint the top surface of this little wood piece. Now I contemplated on doing a decoupage on it, but I really felt with what I was going to do, this needed to be a solid color, and I didn't have the right color in a scrapbook paper or even a cardstock. So I'm going to paint this in that casement. Okay, so once that's painted, I'm going to grab some gel stain. This is some walnut colored gel stain, and I'm going to grab a chippy brush. Now I like to use a stiff chippy brush for this. You definitely don't want it to be too terribly fluffy because you want to be able to get streaks in that gel as you're putting it on here, because I want this to look like a wood frame. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to brush the paint on and pretty much just cover it, and then get as much of that paint off your brush as possible when you're going back over it. And if you feel you have too much of that stain on your brush, just dab some of it off, clean some of it off on that paper towel, and then just go back and forth until you get the desired look that you're looking as far as a faux grain. But you know, just do that all over this picture frame and you'll be good to go. Next, I decided that this piece here was too bright white, so I am going to grab some of my brown sugar glaze from Couture and a baby wipe, and I'm just going to wipe that on there, just making it a little bit more of an aged appearance. So I've got these from the Dollar Tree, these little doilies, and I'm going to take them and I am going to coffee stain them. And I do this by just taking some coffee, pouring it in a bowl, adding some water to it because I didn't want them too terribly dark, and letting those little doilies soak in there. And then I just wring them out. I don't rinse them off. I just wring them out and let them dry. And this is what they'll look like. All right, so I ended up only using one of these doilies, so I've got a stained one set aside for another project. And I want this doily on top of the backing of this frame here, and then I'm going to want the frame to go on top of it. And it's just like so. But we're going to have to trim it and adhere it. And to do that, I'm just going to apply just a little dot of hot glue directly to the fabric that doesn't have a hole. I don't know how much of the edges you'll be able to see. I couldn't remember at this time, and I was like, well, I don't want to see it anyway. So I'm just going to tack it down in just a few spots on each edge of this frame. And then I'm just going to trim off the excess. I'm going to do a insufficient trim, if you will, at first, just to shorten it down. Then I'm just going to flip it over, and on the edges here, I'm going to apply some hot glue. Well, after I tack down this little section here and a couple other sections. I just want this to be as taut as possible. I don't want it to crinkle up. Trim down a little bit more. And then I'm just going to run some hot glue along the edge. And then I'll use my little spatula here and then just bring that fabric into that glue. I'm going to do this on all 4 sides. And then I'm just going to trim off that excess all along those edges. And then next, I'm just going to place the frame pieces together. Now, something else, I know you might actually have one of those Dollar Tree wooden frames in your stash. And if so, use one of those. That would be a perfect fit for this project, I'm sure. I believe those were 5x7s. But yeah, just put this together, push those prongs down, and I don't know, I think it looks like a wood frame. I think it looks pretty good. Okay, so I've got this pick right here. This came from Hobby Lobby. Of course, you know they've got 50% off now, and with any luck, when they start their 75% off Christmas, we can grab some more. But I'm just going to pull one of the little pieces off. I am just going to kind of push whatever is on the back side. I want this to lay as flat as possible down, just like this. I think it looks like a little tree, you know, a forest tree with a little bit of snow on it. But I'm going to push it as far forward from the back as possible. Then just use some hot glue and adhere that down. Here I'm just kind of pulling it out from the back side, just making sure I've got that stem piece that runs right down the center adhered. I'm going to kind of fluff it up a little. I'm going to grab some of these bells. I know I want to put a bell. I didn't know how many I wanted to use at first, so you're going to see me playing around with 2 or 3. Just kind of getting an idea. This is how I work, just kind of seeing. And then it also gives me an idea of what sparse spot is not going to be covered up. So I need to add some more branches in there. Now on the front side, there are the little stubs where these little pieces came off of, the pieces of greenery. And that's what I have hooked those bells onto. And I did ultimately decide on 2 of them, but I'm going to take just and trim off some little pieces of that greenery and just kind of tuck in where I feel it needs to be a little fuller. And I will also use some hot glue to tack those bells down, even though I've got them on those little, I don't know what to call them, the little stubbies, the little stubby part. Even though they're hooked on that, I don't want them flinging off. So we're going to tack those down with some glue as well. And then just trim up this piece right here, and it's going to end up going right in there. See, look how good that looks when you fill in that negative space. Oh, I love it. I think this came out so perfect. Of course, if you wanted to add a ribbon or something like that to it, you can. But I love the simplicity in this piece right here. I'm kind of leaning towards this being my favorite one. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I found one more little sparse spot. I will adhere that in there, and then it is time to move along to our final project. Okay, so this one really isn't much of a DIY. I mean, it's easy peasy, okay? It's not going to take me less than 2 minutes. I'm going to paint these candlesticks that I guess you can say when you purchase stuff out of the vintage category on Whatnot, you're kind of thrifting if you get a really good price for it, and that's what I did with these. I grabbed these from a friend of mine, Sarah's Vintage Vault on Whatnot, and I bought these. They came with those candlesticks. Unfortunately, the candlesticks do not work. I tried to put batteries in them. They don't work, so we're just going to set those aside, because what I was going to do was a technique on them to try to grunge them up a little bit, but since they don't work, I'm not going to waste my time. But I'm going to paint these in my Iron Gate black paint color. And after about 3 coats or so, I'm going to set those aside, and then I'm going to grab some more of this scrap fabric that I had. I'm going to grab some distressing ink because I want these to look a little bit more aged. I at first tried applying that ink with a brush, but it wasn't really doing much. So then I decided, well, I'm just going to rub this fabric over the ink pad and just hold it down with my finger and pull it through, and that did the trick. So I'm going to do this to both of those pieces of fabric. And then I'm going to simply tie it in a knot. And then just trim off any excess. And that's it. Now, honestly, I think I kind of liked the brassy look a little better. So this would be pretty if you have like a bronze paint or something to kind of bronze them up a little. But, you know, I think black candlesticks are still a very practical choice. So, but you paint yours any color, and just adding this fabric just gives it that primitive, rustic vibe, in my opinion. And yeah, so we'll just tie those on there. And where I snipped the excess off, I just thought it was too straight cut. It needed to be a little bit more distressed. So I'm just going to take this little picker and just pull out some of those threads just to kind of ravel it up a little bit. And this is one of my candlesticks that I had grunged up. If you have not seen that video, I will make sure to link that in the description box if you want to go watch it. I got some difference in color from one to another, but there's a reason behind it, but you'll have to watch the video. But anyway, this is what I'm going to use, and I think these are fantastic for that primitive rustic look. You guys will have to let me know which of these projects was your favorite, and I hope to see you on the next video. Bye-bye!